Welcome to another episode of Final Fantasy XIII. I'm Dice and joined again by...
Hi, it's Isala.
And so we got some phone calls from Sarah last week. She had a lot of interesting conversations with us through a crystal?
Yeah, it's like those tin can telephones. Same concept. The crystal vibrates.
Through space.
Yes.
Okay. We don't even know where Sarah's crystal is anymore, because I think last time we saw her, she was taken by the Guardian Corps, which were apparently not helpful.
Yeah. It's all we know is it's somewhere. Still in Cocoon.
Okay. And Snow just knew what we had to do the whole time anyways. Just carry on and make do.
Yeah, defy their focus by fulfilling their focus like Sarah did.
But also fight the focus. And
Right. And the government, because why not?
So we are just taking care of some maintenance here. We're switching over to Snow this week. We got a lot of Crystarium to spend on him.
I feel like he hasn't been leveled in a while.
So weird. But yeah, we basically get a maxed on 2 rolls? Oh, so close. Lightning was less than 1 note away from maxing Commando. Yeah, so I mean, it's expensive to get these nodes, but even just the regular mobs we've done, like obviously I did some grinding at one point, but it wasn't even that bad. The fights go relatively fast, and there's fair density doing what we needed to do. But yeah, so Snow, Lightning again, just for the damage, and Vanille for those strong debuffs.
When they work.
Belladonna Wand helps with that. I don't even want to imagine what it's like not using the debuff.
Yeah, I would not want to. So we're kind of leaving like the Salya Springs area, and I think one of the things we didn't mention last time is that you can actually find Bismarck in there, and he's a Fal'Cie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. It's not in the cutscene at the start or anything, and is it just like off in the distance, or...
If I remember correctly, if you look into the water, there's like bubbles or whatever, and you can approach them and it triggers like a small cutscene.
Oh.
I actually don't know that I knew about it until recently.
We might be coming back down to the ground floor. Maybe I can see if I can backtrack shortly.
Yeah, and I think you get like a little data log entry, but it doesn't really say anything.
There, and we'll be in Ava.
You're almost home.
Yep.
So we go through a broken tower
Doesn't exactly
to get to
look
the
like
other
it's gonna
side.
be a leisurely stroll.
And that's the normal path?
I mean, there's clearly no other way.
A Fal'Cie!
Oh, so we just head through this Fal'Cie's lair to get to Airbo, right?
What's another Fal'Cie at this point, huh?
She's not even impressed.
I mean, the only one that we've actually killed at this point is Anima, right? Because we didn't really
Right.
do a
I
whole
don't like
bunch
the
to
looks of that.
Bartondalis.
Yeah. Like, we've fought them, but yeah, I think Anima is really the only one we've soundly defeated. Well,
And it was obviously part of their plan to be defeated.
yeah. If we even really defeated Anima, I mean, I guess you don't really know for sure.
Yeah. I'm sure the Guardian Corps and Psycom's anchor missile tether things that they shot through him really helped.
I mean, he's trapped in all that crystal now, so...
Yeah. He completed his focus too. We got a waypoint sea stone here, so definitely grabbing that.
Yeah, those are the important ones.
Oh, they're all important. They're all side quest completion. A more interesting dog thing here.
Yeah, its design is something.
Let's switch it up.
I like the spikes on its back.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously for aerodynamic, right?
I'm tougher than you thought.
But so we left that springs and we immediately end up in what looks like a desert, which I guess maybe it's an oasis.
It's not like super deserty necessarily, but it's not springs anymore.
No. Yeah, I did not remember how short that section was.
Yeah, the springs area.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. I almost wonder if they wanted to do more with it, just because it's really short and yet it has unique music.
Unique music, and it had unique fights. I mean, obviously variants on things we had kind of already fought, but
Yeah. I also don't remember if that was one of the locations shown in the original trailer or not.
oh, maybe.
It might have been, but it's kind of easy to get that location confused with the Grappler Whitewood area that Saz and Vanille went through earlier in the game, especially if you're just going from memory and not looking at it.
The Sunlit Waterscape, I think.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Sorry,
Yeah.
Grappler Whitewood was the one with lightning
And Hope, yep. Yeah, legitimately, I thought that there was I thought you went back through the Sunlit Waterscape with the full party, but I think you had mentioned it off camera that like the trailers had a lot of stuff in there
Just another battle.
Yeah.
that was not
Yep.
effectively what was actually happening.
Yeah, I know. Like specifically, the original like debut like announcement trailer shows a scene with lightning at least there, even though she's not ever there in the actual game.
Yeah.
Probably it was just one of the places they had done enough to feel comfortable putting in a trailer.
True. And it is definitely a Final Fantasy area, like big trees, lots of colors, which for the generation that this came out in, there was having colors was a selling feature.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, honestly, that aspect of it, I mean, I think we've mentioned, like, graphically, this game holds up really well today.
There's some
honestly,
design
like-
decisions that were maybe not.
But, like, this is being recorded on PC, but even the PS3 version, I mean, they mostly look similar. I don't know how different the rendering actually is. But, yeah, game still looks fantastic today.
I mean, when it came out on PS3, it was one of the selling points of the Blu-ray drive, right? Being able to have high-quality cutscenes that they're always pushing with Final Fantasy, but also having uncompressed audio is huge. So, like, the music being standout is also great from that.
Yeah. And I think, like, was this... I don't remember if this was multiple discs on the Xbox 360. I think that it was.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
it was. I think it was at least 3.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the Xbox 360, of course, still used DVDs. They may have been enhanced in some way, I'm not sure. But I think... Oh, yeah, because they were dual layer. So, you know, the Xbox 360's discs could only hold, like, 8.5 gigabytes of data or something like that, compared to 25 or 50 gig for a Blu-ray. So they probably took advantage of that, I'm sure, considering it was only one Blu-ray.
I think it was also the time when the PS3 wasn't requiring installs or not in the same capacity. I remember Metal Gear Solid 4 coming out and that having like an hour install process where there was like weird FMVs and Solid Snake smoking
Yeah.
To try and hide the install because they couldn't get the asset streaming good enough off of the Blu-ray.
Yeah, I don't think this game required an install, and actually, it also never had a digital release
Yeah, true.
on the PS3, so, or the Xbox for that matter. So the only way is to have the disc copy or have the Steam version.
Is it available through PS Now? Because I think a lot of that stuff was limited to the
Be ready for
digital
the next
games.
fight.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on PS Now or not, actually.
I think at this point, Steam is definitely the best way to play it, even though there are unpatched bugs because Square doesn't know how to PC release.
Yeah. Unless you have a PS3, the disc version is cheap now. I think it's like, you can have it for around $20. It's probably the same price as the Steam version.
Yeah, that was just a different version of a goblin that we had fought earlier. It's the buffing variant, or I guess stronger buffing variant.
Yeah, it uses an ability called Goblin Enhancement.
But we got our waypoint, and that was the real point of that waystone.
See, now you have to fight two of these at the same time.
Oh wow! Yeah, some of the combat combinations they throw at you is just like, it's just attrition. I mean, obviously, there's a possibility I could have avoided that. I'm sure there's a lot of fights that I could have avoided, but the more fights I do now, the less I have to farm total later.
Yeah.
There is such a thing as being too careful.
And while it's still mostly a corridor simulator, having the occasional fight to split it up is nice.
I did not.
Yes. Even though it's really the only other... This will be a topic we'll probably come back to a little bit. Even though fighting is the only kind of real content besides exploration in this game.
So Tajian's Tower is a little weird. It does have its own music, but the music that we had walking up here was the same as the Vestige all the way back in chapter 2 and 3, or just 2.
I'm not the only one hearing that, am I?
No, it couldn't be them. Could it?
I don't know. It's weird. Like voices in my head.
I hear it. Your presence here draws the tyrant's gaze. Leave this place at once.
We can't leave. This is the only way for us to get through. Please, help us.
As you wish. Look for us, and the way will open.
I think that is a really cool concept that is just completely underutilized.
That was easy enough.
The way the tower
Could be a
shifts.
trap.
The
Could be.
Or the music.
elevator that plays on a music box feed.
This is
Yeah.
our ride. Bumpy or not.
Yeah, so like, this is kind of really the only area that I feel qualifies as like a dungeon
Hurry up.
at all. In the entire game. Like, I guess you could say that like the fifth arc is kind of that.
Yeah.
But this at least, like, it doesn't necessarily have puzzles.
No.
But it is as close as this game gets to having puzzles.
Yeah, because I mean, kind of the same way that the very first, the Vestige, when you're walking through snow, where you had like press occasional buttons and activate a thing. It's in
Yeah.
that same vein, but much more elaborate because you're further in the game. But it's structured like a dungeon.
Yes. And it has, like, I don't want to really sound like I'm exaggerating too much, but for lack of a better term, it at least has kind of a mini storyline, which they kind of just introduced with the statues. So there's kind of a path for progression that's not necessarily just we're gonna walk through this and open doors. Granted, it's not, well, as we'll see, it's not a lot more than that. But like I said, it's as close as this game gets to something really resembling that type of structure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's just a little it's not out of place in any way, but it is definitely just it kind of compresses the time frame, because like we've already been in chapter 11 for so long. This would be its own chapter compared to all of the content up to this point,
Right.
if they didn't need to hit 13 chapters specifically for reasons.
Well, you gotta have references to the game number. That is mandatory. Yeah, the elevator concept is cool, that it's essentially acting like a music box while it's traveling.
It doesn't play with anything though. Like
No,
it's
it doesn't.
it's just aesthetics. I like those aesthetics, but like it would be cool if you had to like make note placements to force it to go at different speeds or something.
Right. Or unlock, additional treasure if you play like a certain tune or whatever.
Yeah, that would have been very Final Fantasy.
Run! Well, look at that. A new route.
How nice of him.
But yeah, so the concept of the tower is that we're trying to get to the top because apparently the top gets us to Erba, but we're being chased by a fal'Cie the whole time. We're invading his domain, which makes sense based on the fact that we had the vestige music playing outside on our way here.
Right.
So we're in its territory. But it's not its original territory. These statues are apparently the guardians of the tower, and they don't have the energy to repel the invader at this point, basically. And so we are tasked with doing more seat stones. But they're
What else?
but they're statues that aren't actually Seath in any way.
Yeah, and that's kind of really what I was trying to get at, where like they did make an effort to kind of do something unique, but it ends up just being an excuse to do more combat encounters.
Yep. So we have a new variant of our clockwork pulse automaton.
Time for a new plan.
They're gold. That's really the only difference from a mechanical standpoint. I think they do like a whirling suck-in wind arrow attack. But I don't believe the other ones did.
They do still suffer from the same design flaw. Do enough damage and they expose their weak points.
Well, they figured if they made them out of a weaker material, they would not be as difficult to break. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Nothing else, they're a source of upgrade materials for later.
That's the sole purpose of every enemy in this game. If it's not Crystarium points, it's Gil and or upgrade mats.
Yeah.
Directly or indirectly.
So they're kind of mean in placing these wolf-like enemies in these corridors, because if you are trying to dodge them, it's basically impossible.
And so yeah, it's not particularly far to get to any of these marks. As you saw, there is basically a circle and it leads us directly between them. I do like the name of this one, Gelatitan.
Gelatitan, yes, it's a great name.
I think this is probably going to be the episode where we hear the most actual battle music too.
Yeah, probably.
So appreciate it while it lasts. Too.
Yeah. Since there'll be quite a few marks and newer enemies, because they introduce a couple variants here. I don't know if there's any outright new enemies, except for at the end, but...
Yeah, it kind of hurts. It's not a pushover.
How about this?
My paradigms are not set up the best for pushing this. We really need to be in Try Disaster more. Like most enemies, though, once you stagger it,
and throw it up in the air.
that's what we needed, that lightning damage.
It is weak to it.
Just another battle.
So close.
You get a speed sash, though.
It's the ATB charge. I haven't upgraded any of them because when farming, it's super useful if you're not expecting to get any of the first strikes. Kill ATB charge is better than I think the first strike version, but with the first strike version, you can immediately upgrade it to get full ATB.
Right. And of course, the kill one is not useful if there's only it's against bosses, where there's generally only one enemy.
And we're not using Saz or have any synergist besides Saz with haste, and that's where I think starting with really comes into play.
Yeah, to get haste out ASAP.
Yeah.
So conveniently, they actually put the next one right there.
They're kind here. We'll get to it shortly, but do you know how I'm allergic to critical path?
Yes.
It doesn't hurt, but it's definitely the less optimal path forward later on. Yeah, so we went from one hunt mark immediately to a second one because that wolf in the hallway did not respawn.
It's very nice of them.
And we also got a preemptive strike on them.
Now you're gonna get it.
This is effectively a non-fight because of that.
How about this?
I don't intentionally kill the other enemies because I wanted to Libra them. I don't think we've gotten this pink variant yet, but they don't get an opportunity. They just incidentally die here. Yep, there it's gone.
They accidentally take AoE damage.
Yup.
Aw, didn't die to the fall.
Yeah, we've already fought an ambling bellow. That was right before we were heading into the mines. The mark right there. That was a color variant on it, I believe. I can hear the item chest. I can't see the item chest. I can hear it. So the
It's just
sound is
taunting you.
yes. There's a couple instances of that. The sound is apparently proximity based, but does not respect walls or line of sight. One thing I'll say is, like, with all the other sea stones, there's a story of the mark in some capacity. All of these are the story of, hey, go kill this thing. There's a name, and it stole my power, go kill it. No real reason why it stole its power, it's just...
Right. It's like, kill it and I'll help open the tower for you.
Yeah. I wonder if they had a mandate where they couldn't put multiple pages on there. But, so that's 3 marks. Back to back to back.
Really all in this same room.
Yeah. I think this is the tutorial for how the rest of the tower is going to work, but the tower isn't that long that I think you needed such an elaborate this is how it works section.
Right.
So this is the Garangach. I am not going to pronounce that right, and I am sorry. Apparently the etymology for that is the Aboriginal Australian mythology. It's a giant eel-like creature, an incarnation of an ancestral rainbow serpent. It could swim through water and bore through stone, and its travels created many of the continent's rivers and lakes. So we just find it in a tower.
Yeah. I wonder if they really only took the name as inspiration in this case, because...
It is a lizard. I think there is some relationship there. That's not unheard of.
Yeah. This is true. It's definitely not a unique model tailored to that, though.
I don't even think it's a unique mark.
Yeah, you might be right.
Take that!
Yeah, they definitely do a good job, like, not just in this game, in general, of having a bunch of references to all kinds of mythology.
Yeah, you can just take in the name and be like, okay, whatever, but then if you look into it, there is at least some thought process put in there, which I think has been true for all the Final Fantasies.
Yes, definitely. Oh, that put out the fire.
Well, yeah, you had to use the key to unlock the door, but the door was fire. All the vestige areas, Fal'Cie inspired areas, definitely remind me of the temples from Final Fantasy X, and that would have totally been an orb puzzle.
Yeah.
In that structure, but they're just so streamlined that I didn't remember Tajin's Tower at all from my first playthrough.
Yeah, I remember that from talking off the episodes about that.
Right, here we go again.
Can't take a hint.
You're one to talk.
Huh?
Woo! Well, I'll be damned.
Are they sad?
Well, I guess the way is open now.
Super stoned Sentai warriors.
Yeah. It was I feel like that seems a little
Thank you.
weird, but
If we had more story of the statues in some way, or everything we've seen turned to a statue has been a person that failed their focus. So are they from an ancient civilization before the Fal'Cie?
right. I mean, we don't really know. I mean, they're even in the data logs and other kind of material, there's basically nothing about Tajin's Tower. There's some speculation as to why it was built. That being the part of what the Pulse Fal'Cie were tasked with was searching the land like far and wide, and so like it was probably built as like a means to like search the sky, like kind of like a Tower of Babel reference.
Okay.
But that's all we get, really. We just know that it was that it's old, and for some reason we know, like we discover in the game, that there's these statues that are clearly some kind of spirits that are upset with the current state of it. We don't know who they are, or why. Like, was the Foul Sea that's been flying around not always in charge of this place?
You definitely get that impression from now that they've actively attacked it.
Right.
And they didn't want us to come in because it was going to anger it more, and there's not that many statues.
Right. And actually, the data log does specify the tower was built by Foul Sea, which kind of makes it even weirder. But
not this Foul Sea, or maybe this Foul Sea is lost its way. We did get some.
We know, because there was like the whole War of Transgression, that not all of the Foul Sea got along. But like, there's nothing to indicate it was built by, like, say, a Cocoon Foul Sea or something like that.
Yeah. But we also did get some Sea Stone mentions that like Foul Sea had kind of started going rogue and making not a what is the term for it? Malicious compliance. They were working towards their goal, but not actually working towards their goal.
Yeah. Like, basically, you know, the Foul Sea weren't allowed to really kill people directly, but they were like, but technically I can give them focuses and make l'Cie, so we're just going to make a bunch of l'Cie with kind of pointless tasks. Or unaccomplishable tasks.
Yeah, I just realized here that the music notes seem to just repeat too. So they really did not do it. That's really disappointing.
You know, this might be kind of fun.
It's almost like one of those things where you have to wonder, like, were they intending to do more with it and just didn't have time, or some other constraint?
Yeah. There's a lot of, I mean, I don't think I'm saying it was a lot of effort, but like somebody had an idea and they accomplished that idea, just didn't do anything. Because nothing else in this game is music based, from what I'm like, besides the music that's actually in the game.
Right, besides like the normal like leitmotifs and things like that, but there's no like gameplay mechanic tied to it, certainly, or anything like that. I mean, we do also know that, at least in the earlier stages of development, there was not a lot of common agreement amongst members of the development team for a lot of aspects of the game.
Okay.
Because they've stated that in kind of interviews, that until they released the demo, they didn't even have like a unified vision of what the game, how the game would play. So, you know, anything could have really happened with the design for some of these places.
Yeah, the assets were in the pipeline, or someone had an idea and was just like, yeah, I'm going to do this. It's the Final Fantasy XIV 1.0 flower pot where...
Right. Yeah, like, I'm going to do my small part of it, and somebody else will figure how it all fits together later.
Yeah. So we took a little stroll around down here, since our statue buddies had just cut the tail off that Foul Sea. I wanted to see if that did anything. Maybe there was an item that dropped out of it or something. It doesn't exist. It had getting that stage of the tower did not make any differences further down below.
I'll take the lead.
And so the critical path arrow is pointing one direction, and we head the other.
Well, I mean, there's an item.
And there's a Foul Sea.
It just kind of pops up there.
He's not actively working against us?
Right, like, you would think if he really wanted to kill you, that would have been a good opportunity.
Yeah. As we go up the tower, we were fighting a whole bunch of creatures, like things that would have invaded the tower from below. But up here we have Seath, so
Just follow along.
did the people walk in, or these are the people that were in the tower and got changed at some point because they failed their focus? They could have been other people trying to stop this fal'Cie, or maybe they were subordinate to the fal'Cie.
Well, now they're just a source of Crystarium points.
And possibly upgrade mats.
Possibly. I don't know
Not
if
with
one's
that-
dropped from Seath.
And also not with that score.
True.
We got some beach attire, got some rainbow anklets. There's an alternative elevator.
You can only go to specific floors, though.
Well, it's how you do skyscrapers correctly. You have to have an express elevator and then secondary shuttle elevators. Well, this was a very advanced society.
What happened when you get to the floor where, like, the tower was cut in half? Does the elevator, like, go over the edge and continue?
We'll have to wait and find out.
Over here.
It's a kind of, like, wheel-shaped, so you would think, theoretically.
But it moves with the power of music. You have to sing to it.
That's true.
This is just a straight up vampire.
Right. You're just straight up fighting a vampire.
How about this?
Don't even know if he does any, like, vampire-like things, like life drain.
I don't think so. I think it might have an absorb element on it without imperil. But with auto battle and the AI's ability to focus once you get a lever on it, that's a non-issue. Those wind. Vampires fly.
Yeah, sure. That checks out. You lost lightning there.
It
Oh,
was
never mind. She got back up.
fine.
She's fine.
She needed a little rest carrying the party so much. So you may notice that we skipped the number. Regardless of how much I avoid critical path, it doesn't expect you to go backwards first. Surprise, surprise.
Weird. So I'm just gonna guess that to get past this floor, there's 3 more statues.
No way! Well, unfortunately, that way is blocked right now. Fight me!
The flying things are hard to run into sometimes.
They're so weird.
That was a difficult one.
I'm sure this won't have any consequences for later.
See, if there is more involved to the kind of like moving around of the tower, it would almost be like kind of the Cloister of Trials-esque thing.
Where you block off a way, or you could have spun it around to find a treasure chest or something.
Yeah.
Like, they could have used the music as a hint for what the pattern was supposed to be or something.
Right. But as it stands, like, I think there's pretty much, like, only forward progression. Like, you can't necessarily change the path so that you can't go backwards or something like that. You can only open up new paths, so...
Yeah, I believe so. And if we had done the critical path, we would have had to come here anyways to progress the thing, regardless. I think we maybe get one additional cutscene because of the way I did this.
One star.
The screeches will basically interrupt the entire party, regardless of what action you're doing. So it's hard to get off a blitz, because if you get interrupted, it actually eats the ATB that you tried to spend.
Oh, yeah. That's annoying.
Yes. I'm sure it will have no effect later on. So yeah, we spun the tower, we got access to the room, but the thing's not here. It's okay though, there are stairs.
Is that one of the item chests that you heard earlier?
Certainly hope so.
Like how Lightning was just waiting there, like, yeah, he's definitely coming back.
There's only one way to go. That's an interesting placement for those Seath marks. So it actually has two Seath marks on it, so this is possibly a Seath fused from 2, we'll see?
Yeah. It's interesting to think what might have happened.
I got an idea.
Dragon Ball Z fusion, you know.
Yeah. So it has a slightly interesting mechanic where it'll put basically an immunity shield, melee immunity shield up that you have to stagger off. Unfortunately, it is time-based, but not at the same speed that the stagger drops, so it'll still be in stagger when it puts its shield back up. So I can't even build up the stagger to bring the shield down. Why? And also, so Vatala is apparently a vampiric being from Hindu mythology. They are spirits that possess corpses. So, you know, corpse aesthetic with all the Seath stuff where they get fused, that works there. We've already fought a vampire, so it kind of all works. There's been bats, so this is apparently our graveyard.
Yeah. Kind of like an undead theme going on, at least among the, like, I don't want to say humanoid, but things that maybe were humanoid at some point, because there's also just those wolves. Wolf-like things. Really can't call them wolves.
Always nice getting a 5-star on a mark. I don't think we've seen a Libra scope in a while. Also, what's that boy doing there?
That's a little out of place with the whole... I mean, I guess we saw the Pulsework soldiers, but... So that's definitely just a blue reskin of the Berserkers from
Yes.
earlier.
I will say it is a much more difficult encounter.
I thought he'd be back. You don't really like us here, do you? Yeah, this isn't over.
So apparently it can control both fire and ice. The little well at the very bottom behind the 3 statues when we first walked in
Might have bitten off more than we can chew
had
here.
Gotta be something
fire
useful
and
here.
frost energy kind of emanating from it. But yeah, so I mean the biggest problem with this fight is that we can't do a preemptive strike like we did for all of the other ones. It does not show its flank to you. We got plenty of debuffs on it. Unfortunately, this sword goes to town.
Hold nothing back.
So when you first came in here, and there's that the first cutscene where the statues were talking to Vanille and Fang, they said something about like the tyrant's gaze, and this enemy is named Tyrant. But I don't really think that's what they meant.
No.
Just follow along.
It's just an interesting thing to note that, like, I don't know if they considered that when naming it, because they're talking about the fallacy.
I got an idea.
That could have been just like a localization thing. Like, what are the chances the person that named all of the enemies like also
New or yeah.
wrote that dialogue? Especially because, like, I assume many of these enemies have the same name in the other versions, especially the ones that reference like other cultural like mythos.
Yeah.
There's not really much of a reason to change those.
Yeah, so the sword does a whole bunch of combos and it hits for like 1,000 as a melee swing, which, as you see my HP right now, that's basically one shot. And the Tyrant itself will do a very strong fire attack, and if you get wombo comboed, Snow was just going down, even when he was in Sentinel in previous attempts. Luckily I got the stagger there, and so now it's basically done.
Just follow along.
It certainly feels like they knew certain fights were easier based on the mechanics they had set up, and
No
sometimes
problem.
force it against you. We even saw that in the original Vestige, where there were dogs that just would not turn around.
That wasn't actually a mark or anything. That was
Nope.
kind of just there.
Yeah, that was the hardest fight in here. I don't know if maybe it's a rare spawn, but I think it just freely respawns there. I'm sure if I had like not bar fire, was it bar fire? The whatever the defensive is, if I had that, and if I use a synergist instead of a saboteur there, I'm sure it would be substantially easier.
Yeah.
So we are forced to do a little bit of backtracking. I'm not sure if we could have picked up that statue without having rotated the tower earlier, but I think they basically just gave you alternative paths to what you needed. This is the state that we had to have the tower in, but we could have done other progression paths.
Hey, it's not completely linear.
So weird. So, I was wondering, so we didn't really see any bats. We have Bat Seed, but most are like humanoids or they get bigger in some capacity, whereas there's some that are here. I'm afraid that maybe the bats are Seath of children.
Oh, yeah. That could be.
And that actually might play into the name they use for this mark. So I'm going to push with this, and I'm so sorry. Penagallon, also known as Hantu Penagallon, is a variation of the vampire myth from the Malay Peninsula. Hantu Penagallon appear as beautiful women in the day, but come nighttime, they detach their heads and bring their stomach and entrails along as they fly through the sky in search of newborns and mother in labor to feed on their blood. Penagallon comes from the Malay root word tanggal, meaning to detach.
Interesting.
So it's not a bat, it's a detached head.
Yeah. A little creepy.
Just a bit. And not a 5-star.
Still counts.
Diamond Bangle sells great. So unfortunately we exhausted our non-critical path now and have to backtrack to where I decided, you know, following the arrow is just not my way.
You gotta unbranch.
I think I still heard an item box there. They're all haunt me in my dreams.
Yeah. Unopened item boxes. Well, I mean, at least here's one.
We got some orbs. And more new enemies. I feel like they could have, or maybe they expected to use the tower more as like an alternate path thing later, like instead of going up, you go down. Gotten like inverted towers in other Final Fantasies.
Yeah. They seem like bigger versions of those bird things that summoned that you fought earlier.
They always buff and debuff.
Okay.
So I think we fought some of them in like the Waste Spire, File Peaks. is when we were first introduced to them. We fought some inside the 5th arc. These are just the latest incantation of them.
It's a long elevator ride.
Olden times, man. This generation.
It's true. We did mention you couldn't install it to the hard drive, at least probably.
I think the only time we ever actually saw loads in game was when cutscenes, like the video cutscenes played.
Yeah.
For the most part, the gameplay was always pretty seamless.
And like the chapter transitions where you're completely going to a new area.
Yeah. Well, those are always usually backed with a cutscene to hide that loading.
It just happens to be. Well, yeah, I guess it could have been intentional to hide loading.
What number's gonna be? Right.
Would have never guessed.
Could have been like 67 or something. Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, but then you'd be wondering like how many you missed in the basement.
Well, because I think we actually missed... I think the last one we did before going into the tunnel was 10, maybe? And then there wasn't any in the tunnel, and then we did 20 when we came out of the spring. So we definitely skipped some back in the Arc-Pile Step area.
I definitely don't think there is much of a method to the way they were numbered beyond like the first few, and then obviously like the ones in here.
Yeah, they flowed reasonably, but there seems to be like jumps and starts.
Yeah.
So I thought that this was the group that we had already fought, and I was a little confused here, and I was like, oh wait, no, there is legitimately a mark in there.
Yeah. It does look like it kind of just respawned, though. I mean, it did spawn only after you talked to the guy, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's our weird flying wasp things again. At least not the annoying winged version.
Yeah, only one variation of that, I guess.
Oh no, I'm so upset.
Let's switch it up.
Yeah, it's a unique sound effect, though. You would think they tried to reuse that.
Oh boy.
Time for a new plan.
So a Mushusu? Again, I am so sorry for all of the poor pronunciations. Doesn't really match its namesake very much. So I'll re-say it again. The Mushusu is depicted on the Ishtar Gate in the city of Babylon. So the depiction of it is an eagle's talons on its hind legs, feline on the forelegs, a long neck and tail, a horned head, and a snake-like tongue crest. So it's kind of a progenitor to like a griffin, I guess.
Yeah.
There being a long appendage kind of plays the tail, but I think it was more just a name they could have used for this one.
Yeah, it was probably a hey, we need a third mark for this level. What can we use for a unique name?
But we apparently became a monumental ally, so that might be our last statue.
Oh, so I mean, first they got rid of fire.
Keep it up.
I can certainly still hear an item box and it's killing me.
What if they put an item box in like some uncompleted area and just didn't know?
I'll find the out of bounds.
Yeah.
I think we'll see what the what that ice melting gets us access to next week.
Yeah. We'll unravel the mysteries of Tajin's Tower. Maybe?
One monument at a time.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.